You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs. He's Ben, I'm Hobbs. You're in Clown World, but you knew that already, or otherwise we wouldn't be here. How is everybody today?
I hope they had a great week. I ran out of super male vitality, and look, the fuck happened to my beard.
It just falls out. Did it fall out, or did it like suck itself back in?
It went back in.
Oh, okay.
So I've absorbed it, I guess. I don't know, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So yeah, I had a busy week, so I really haven't been paying attention to a whole lot going on in the news, unfortunately. So this is probably going to be a Ben and Simon heavy episode.
And Simon has been invited, so we're hoping he shows up. Hobbs was busy spawning once again.
I can't stop, won't stop.
I mean, he's got his super male vitality subscription still going, obviously. Big news last week. A lot of it came at the end of last week, I thought. This week has actually been a little bit slow still. I mean, last week was just so huge. We didn't have a show, some scheduling issues. And then we had the SHOT Show. Somebody liked our intro music, me starving to death in the apocalypse because dino nuggies don't fit in my macros. We're glad the music could evoke that feeling for you. At the end of last week, you had the Putin interview, big one. I thought we might wait for Simon to talk about that one. I didn't catch the Weaponized News show on it, but they covered it. The other big news was the special counsel interviewing Biden, and one sentence I think in that whole thing is pretty much sunk Biden. And it's not that he's guilty of hiding documents haphazardly, any of the other stuff. It was, but he was described as a well-meaning elderly gentleman with a poor memory, I think is what the words were.
Right. And like I said, I've had a busy week, so I haven't been paying attention. I haven't been listening to any of the podcasts and news shows that I typically listen to. But the last episode of Bongino that I actually heard on, I think it was Friday's episode, he was taking more of a white-pilled approach to Robert Hur's special counsel report in regards to the Biden memory thing. A lot of people on the right and in conservative media were really, really upset that no charges were being pressed, no indictment was forthcoming. And the thing is that with Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, Joe Biden will not ever be indicted at all.
Well, you see that. I mean, you see that even like, I don't know, in the local news, 80-year-old man, burgles something. The judges don't. I mean, it's basically the same thing we're looking at with Biden. That the judges are like, he's harmless. I mean, he'll be dead soon.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. But the point is, though, is that by including that line in the report, that was sort of a passive-aggressive knife between the ribs. Because if the special counsel, he could say that yes, indictments should be forthcoming, charges should be pressed, this guy should be charged, discovery should be made, throw the book at him, and it'll never happen because of the political nature of the Attorney General's office right now. So by including that line, what he's essentially done is he's done more damage to the Biden re-election campaign and the Biden administration than any recommendation for indictment ever could. Because by saying that I'm not going to recommend an indictment because this man is not mentally fit to stand trial, essentially, he's essentially signaled to everybody that if you're not mentally fit to stand trial, you're not mentally fit to run the country for another 4 years. And apparently that one line got a lot of behind the scenes pushback from people who were very upset at its inclusion, telling him to either redact it or strike it from the report entirely. And he's like, nope. So he knew what he was doing.
They're pointing out, this was a Trump hit job. He was appointed by Trump. Not necessarily. I mean, if you look at his background, he's kind of moderate at the worst.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm glad he did do that, because think how much taxpayer money would, just to litigate Biden for that, think about how much taxpayer money that would waste. You know, prosecute him. I mean, sure, you want to make a point. Prosecute him, appeal process. By then, Biden's what, 86, and then he dies?
No, well, yeah, it's the fact that all of that has to go through. It will take years before anything comes of it. You know, he'll be out of office or dead by the time all of those proceedings get wrapped up. So yeah, it's like why push for an indictment when you could just literally throw the entire administration under the bus with one sentence.
There was a couple other things in there too that just showed how much of a liar Biden is. Like, you know, the documents were either locked up or in a situation where they could be locked up. Special counsel photo, soggy cardboard box in the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real secure. And you know, yeah, it's obvious. I mean, I think you're right that this guy was kind of signaling, giving people the out to start getting rid of him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is another step in the slow roll of us being allowed to see behind the curtain of the Biden administration, so that when the DNC is called in August and they slot a new candidate into place, it's not going to come as a complete shock to everybody in the party. Now, whether, you know, I don't think that Robert Hur is one of the people that's actually in on this. And some of the pushback
depends who gets in. I mean, he might be angling for a cabinet spot somewhere, you know, a cushy Bermuda ambassadorship or something.
Yeah, that's possible. But the amount of pushback that he was receiving from people behind the scenes tells me that this might have been too much too soon. You know, this is one of those things where if the DNC is in August, this might be like a June or July bombshell to drop, not a February.
Well, I think it pushes more. I know you were talking about Big Mike getting in there. I think this pushes more towards Mr. Obama not being the nominee, because, you know, if it was going to be, if that was going to be the case, they're prepackaged, ready to go. You know, Michelle's good to go as far as, you know, experience. She, you know, first lady, probably sees a lot of things. You know, everybody loves her, but I think this just shows that she has told somebody, hell the fuck no. And they're trying to kick this off a little early to see what shakes out on who's going to be the nominee.
True. There's also been a New York Post article that was speculating on a Michelle Obama presidency and how there's a lot of tectonic plates that are moving that might signal that in the direction. Personally, from what I've heard from people that have been close to her, that have talked about her attitude towards it, I think that yes, she is wanting nothing to do with this. And I think that there are people above that station that are saying you are going to be it whether you like it or not. Because if you think that the president holds any real power when it's somebody like an Obama or a Biden, then you're sorely mistaken.
I don't know. I still think Newsom thinks he's in there. I mean, he had that. He's getting tough on crime now. You know, deploying the California, State Patrol. Is that CHIPS or that's Highway?
That's Highway Patrol.
But anyways, putting into Oakland because the crime was so bad.
Yeah, but the fact that he let it get to this point to begin with shows that he's not serious, and it's simply a run for optics.
I mean, it's just the fact that he did it. I mean, they were only there, what, a week? Yeah, you're really going to solve all the issues in East Oakland in a week. Good job, buddy. I mean, their big bust was they busted a guy that had 45 iPhones he'd stolen. They had him spread out on a table, like when those small town cops, bust the major drug dealer in their town, and it's a couple of bongs and a bag of aspirin or something. I mean, that was the same thing Newsom did in his East Oakland crime sweep.
Right. Yeah. No human smugglers, no big time drug dealers coming up from south of the border, no fentanyl shipments coming in through Chinatown.
Yeah.
No. One hoodlum stealing 45 iPhones.
That was their big one. I expect to see more of that out of Newsom. I mean, he's got obviously the crime issue is not playing well. I expect he's probably got to make some sort of play on immigration. I don't know how he's going to do that in California. He's fucked it up so bad. What's he going to do? Round up some immigrant? I have no idea how Newsom shows that he can fix the immigration issue being the governor of California.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, he can't do something like Texas. He'll lose his entire base. He can't start closing down the border with Mexico. So I have no idea.
Nope. Right. It's very, very strange. Although one little bit of justice did finally work its way through the system in that Alejandro Mayorkas did get impeached. So that's some good news. Whether or not he'll be convicted and removed through the Senate is another matter, but baby steps.
Boy, I've been really disappointed in the Senate for as close as it is. The stuff they've been sending to the House is just total garbage. Like this latest bill for funding multiple wars, two ongoing ones and one potential one in Taiwan. Why would you even send that to the House?
Well, they're telegraphing that this is exactly what they want to continue.
Yeah. And Rand was lighting up McConnell. Same state. How can I see? Obviously, one of them is not representing their people very well when those two are from the same state and they're complete polar ends.
Yeah. One was elected, one was selected, and just hasn't left in 45 years.
Yeah, he hasn't glitched out lately either, I've noticed. So he must have got his software done right.
Got a full shipment of adrenochrome.
But we'll see how, the Mayorkas thing, the way Senate's been going, I doubt they'll convict him of anything and boot him.
Yeah. He's just singularly awful. And he had that grilling that he got the other day that I saw that was just I think it was Josh Hawley was chewing him out for being just awful at his job, and he turns it into like he's like, well, I'll have you know, Senator Hawley, did you know that I'm Jewish and my mom was a Holocaust survivor, and it's like what does that have to do with anything? I distinctly think that this attack on me is anti-Semitism. It has to be. Any criticism of me, it must be anti-Semitism, not that I'm piss poor at my job. It's like, and Holly's just kind of got this look on his face like, what?
Yeah.
And when he finally got done bitching about the Holocaust, Holly's like, can I address this real quick? And whoever was in charge of the hearing was like, no, we got to move on.
Yeah, I can't wait till, if Trump wins, when they start, bringing some of these directors up for hearings and whatnot. Like the news that came out about how this happened either yesterday or the day before, that yes, the CIA was actually spying on Trump
through foreign through foreign offices.
But they did like a game of telephone of propagating shitty information. They give it to these three guys and then they tell these three guys who tell the next. And, they're like, oh, well, maybe this is really a story. We should start investigating Trump.
Yeah. It's what is it called? Parallel construction.
Just the fact that the CIA was spying on American citizen is one thing. And, Tucker Carlson said the same thing when he found out they were spying when he was trying to open channels to everybody's like, oh, why is he talking to Putin now? He's like, well, I've been trying to do it for a long time, and the CIA shut it down. And they decided to spy on me.
Yeah. Yeah, he got a call from the State Department when he was still working at Fox News saying like, hey, we know that you're going to go and try and visit Russia to have an interview with Putin. And he's like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Like, we know that. It's like, but how do you know that? It's like, you don't need to know how we know that. We just know that we do know that.
Simon's down here. I mean, we talked about Putin here a little bit. We didn't get to talk to him about it last week. I might pick his brain on a little bit. Let me get him up here. 3, 2, 1, and it's Simon. Simon, you there?
Yes, Simon. How are you doing, guys?
Doing well. Hey, I was talking to Hobbs in the pre-show. Apparently, I missed your breakdown of the Putin interview on Weaponized News. He said it happened the night of. I don't know. I missed it, but we just started mentioning Putin. What was the? I guess let's get your. It's hard. I'm sure it's hard for you to break down a 2-hour interview, but what was your Cliff Notes takeaway of our audience of the Putin interview?
Well, as Putin has recently said on Russian TV, he prepared extensively for some really hard questioning from Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like Tucker just rolled out of bed and thought, hey, why don't I go interview Putin? And just like turned up at the Kremlin. He was like utterly unprepared, and he had no significant questions whatsoever.
Was the guy scared or something, you think? Or
I mean, it literally was like the opportunity of a lifetime, and he utterly fluffed it. It was really sad.
I read an interview that
he's got 200 million views.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's made, I don't know, like $1 million or something out of it. So I guess you could call that a success. But in terms of, winning a Pulitzer Prize or a Grammy or whatever you'd get for that kind of thing, it's definitely not significant at all.
Well, and he kind of gave the lame excuse. I saw the first interview he did after interviewing Putin, and I don't know who the gentleman was who was interviewing him, but he was Arabic, and he asked Tucker about the same thing you just said. Why didn't you ask questions about this and that? The hard-hitting things everybody keeps bringing up. And Carlson's, and I thought was lame, excuse was that, well, those are the issues that the Main Street media would say if they talked to him. So I didn't want to ask those.
Yeah. So why didn't he ask him about his mistress or his favorite brand of dog food in that case?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did come off as being like Tucker was way out of his element. There was a little bit of like some sassiness, and Putin threw that sassiness right back at him. And one of the things that I think, and I could be reading this entirely wrong, but when you watch a Tucker Carlson interview with anybody that he's not on a familiar friend-like basis with, when he's actually trying to probe for good questions, he does this thing where he'll ask a question, and then the interviewee will be answering the question, and they'll get towards the end of the question, and then Tucker will just immediately ask another question that has absolutely nothing to do with the question that he just asked. And it seems like it's a bad way to interview because it's an interrogation technique. And he tried that with Putin in the early parts of the interview, and Putin was like, no, I'm going to continue answering the question that I was in the middle of answering. Thank you. And Tucker, I think that's the only trick that he's got in his bag, is that particular technique. And so then he was kind of out of his league, because Putin is not going to fall for something like that. He's a legacy operator. He's an ex-KGB man. He knows these tricks.
Yeah, he wasn't just a KGB man. He was a KGB colonel. He was running.
Yeah.
He was running half of East Germany, for God's sake. So, that it also ignores the whole issue of follow-up questions. If the guy says something that's actually quite significant, even if it's embedded halfway in his lecture about Russian history from 862 to 1862, you've got to be able to pick up on that, hold it in your head, assuming that you're too lazy to write a word down, as apparently Tucker is, and then follow up on it. I mean, you've got a 2-hour interview with the president of Russia. You don't have a notepad, like you're on a real hard budget.
I liked how Putin's history, he completely glossed over the Tsar, and I mean, he didn't even mention the Tsar or the killing of the Tsar. And I saw on Hobbs in the pre-show, Putin can say, and he said Putin was trying to make the claim of an Slavic ethnic claim on the area. And I was looking at more like Putin was trying to make a legal claim. That's just how I think. And that legal claim going back to 862 was flushed down the toilet when they got rid of the Tsar, and no abdication of power was done at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but also he really glossed over the whole Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact as well.
Yep.
And he kind of like implied that the Russian invasion of Poland on the 10th or 17th of September 1939 was in response to a request for help. That was total BS. Like, they had agreed in advance the division of Poland between Hitler and Stalin, and the Germans overran that line and then actually retreated so that the Russians could occupy the part of Poland that had been agreed upon.
Maybe that's what I'm sure Putin knows the story, what actually happened, but that might be what they teach in Russian schools.
Yeah, no, I think that was just total BS, and it didn't account if they were Russian to help the Poles, where they then took 20,000 of the officers and the intelligentsia and the government and executed them in the Katyn forest.
Well, and grudges run deep in that part of the world.
Yeah.
He mentioned multiple times the Polish treatment of Russians and Slavs in Ukraine.
Well, he's talking about Polish mercenaries, of which there are thousands.
I mean, throughout history, not just recently. He mentioned multiple times that the Polish were mistreating the Russians and that the native Russians that were in Ukraine. I think I remember him mentioning it like 3 times.
Well, I think he was more talking about the Volvin massacres, where people like Stefan Bandera, they massacred, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000 Poles. They had like 72 different ways to torture people before they executed them. There's like a book of all the torture techniques, and it's a lot of them involve pulling people's guts out and nailing them to the wall while they were still alive. I mean, real nasty stuff. So, but I'm happy to answer all your questions on that, because I did pay a great deal of attention to it. I had 13 pages of notes, and we spent 2 hours and 15 minutes talking about 1.5 hours of the actual interview. I'd kind of glossed over the first 30 minutes of history lesson, which frankly probably made 95% of Americans turn off. They felt like they were in kind of 10th grade world history and hated every minute of it then and now. And there is there were some substantial takeaways. I felt one of them was that he acknowledged that there was bioengineering of super soldiers and super athletes, and nobody in either the mainstream media or the alternate media picked up on Putin acknowledging, we're doing genetic modifications of human beings to make them super soldiers. And I would say that's fairly significant.
I did catch
and
that.
he wasn't joking. He was like, oh yeah, we're doing that.
China's doing that. They're doing that. I'm sure we're doing that too. Sure, every developed country's doing it.
We already did it in the South a long time ago, but they get our super athletes. What do you think about his comments on the more modern history about how he went to Clinton and said, "Yeah, I'll join NATO"?
Yeah, that's well documented. I don't think that was particularly news.
Yeah.
Some of the exact mechanics of the conversation were kind of slightly interesting. But you've got to remember that they had the Russia NATO Council was actually signed 3 or 4 years before that, in 1997. So that was done with the intention of Russia joining in exactly the same way as the NATO Ukraine Council was announced in Vilnius last year. And incidentally, that met for the second time today. So I'm like, okay, so you did a Russia NATO Council, then you didn't get anywhere. That's now basically broken up. And now there's a NATO Ukraine Council, and that is intended on putting Ukraine into NATO. So it's exactly the same, literally exactly the same.
I mean, think how bad the stock prices would be of major defense industries if that had happened. They would.
Well, I mean, ironically, the stock market tanked out yesterday because Turner suddenly came out and said that we're all about to be. We weren't about to be nuked, but all the American satellites were about to be nuked by some kind of Russian.
Oh yeah. It sounded like some big deal that the Russians have a secret weapon that's a threat to America, and then turns out
literally InfoWars have spent 2 solid days on that. It's been very frustrating indeed, and like a total distraction. And now Republicans are asking for Turner to be investigated by the ethics committee, and they're saying that the whole thing was just a scare tactic to try and stampede Johnson into calling a vote on the Ukraine aid. I mean, literally, it was a disinformation campaign directed by the head of the Intelligence Committee against our own House of Representatives. Personally, I think I
mean, there's ham-fisted attempts to call a vote on something, and this isn't even ham-fisted.
Yeah, but I mean, it made the stock market shit out 2%. Freaked out Alex Jones, who decided to one-up it by saying that it wasn't nuclear, it was X-ray lasers.
Well, and I saw some posts about it that people were saying the way, was it Sullivan that commented on it? He worded it really weird. The weapon would not be used to attack Earth-side targets or something. So they're building an alien defense system. It's like, okay. If that's how you want to take
it. I just hope it gets dropped soon. Remember last time when we had those guys testifying about the aliens at Area 51? And Jones spent like 59 consecutive days talking about UFOs. I mean, I'm really hoping that we don't go there again. Because, I mean, it's almost unbearable with Chase Geisner running these spaces, acting as some kind of Jesuit filter or something. I mean, it's almost unwatchable at this point. I'm sad. I mean, it's really disappointing.
So did our government say you said it's an X-ray laser? They thought it was or Jones thought it was an X-ray laser?
Right. So we've had so many versions, and the Russians have said this is total BS, and it's just an attempt to panic the House of Representatives into signing off on $95 billion.
It seems awfully coincidental that vote's coming up. Tucker Carlson interviews Putin, and then Russia's really dangerous to us again all of a sudden.
Yeah, but I appreciate you guys have been either dealing with babies or surveying requirements. But in the last few days, there's been an absolute mountain of articles about Chinese and Russian disinformation. And tomorrow we've got the Munich Security Conference starting. Today was their kind of like pre-conference day, which is called their Cyber Day. And we had Ray, the FBI director there. He did a 16-minute speech. He was the second keynote speaker at the cyber event. And what was really funny is, how they've banned the use of TikTok amongst the federal government. And then having banned it, Biden then opened up a TikTok account for his election campaign, right? So
and raged out and raged out against ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the sign that Ray was standing directly in front of, which was the list of sponsors, the one that was literally like behind his chest on the podium, was TikTok, while he was talking about Chinese disinformation. It was absolutely hilarious. And then he was saying the PRC's the greatest threat, and we're having to operate with all our partners, and they're trying. He said they tried to take down some children's hospital, and how could they possibly put the poor babies at risk? And I thought, yeah, how could these aardvarks kill 13,000 children in 4 months, and you don't have a whimper about how you want to be helping Interpol arrest these guys, and then you're saying that, the Chinese try to do ransomware on some children's hospital.
Talk about this, because for the past week I haven't been paying attention. I haven't been listening to any
I understand,
podcasts
mate.
or
I'm not being
news
critical
or anything. No, I know. But I'm listening to talk about this, and you're saying that they banned TikTok for federal employees, and then Biden opens up a TikTok account, and then you got a guy standing up in front of a podium shitting all over China, talking about misinformation, while the event he's at is literally sponsored by TikTok on the board behind him. So I have to, at one point, wonder, is this gross incompetence on their part, or is this a big middle finger to people like us who pay attention to this sort of thing?
He was real bold today. So he said, and this is, I'm paraphrasing a bit here. He said, I'm aware that there are Chinese government representatives walking around at this event, the Munich Security Conference, and I want to tell them I know who they are and I know what they're doing.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say you fucking.
Yeah, they're probably crossing the border as he's making that comment. They've got Chinese operatives smuggled in with Mexicans wearing a sombrero.
If they were real worried about that, they'd be more worried about people putting kind of like shape charges on some of America's most significant power transformers, right?
Yeah. I mean, they don't even have to go that far. It's proved by those guys that shut down that, what was it? Didn't they shut down
Oregon or Washington, shooting 50 cows at them?
Yeah, Drag Queen Story Hour. They shut them down.
Yeah. So we have that, but I'm telling you, the next 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we've got the president of Israel was supposed to be going, but he's running the risk of being arrested, so he sent his wife instead. That's real brave. Blinken flew from Albania today. Harris is going there to try and put everyone's mind at rest that if Trump somehow manages to get reelected and isn't in prison, that they won't allow him to pull America out of NATO. But there's going to be some big announcement. I mean, to give you, I've been paying really, really close attention to this, and I'm extremely concerned, really, really concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 60th anniversary of the Munich Security Conference. And like we have in July, the 75th anniversary of NATO and the 75th conference in Washington, D.C. And they're going to make real big announcements of that they've been telegraphing. They're talking about looking back 60 years, looking forward 60 years, and making sure that the West is in control of the development of the new world order. Literally, they're saying that. And, they're France, Holland, Belgium, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Estonia, they're all putting out these intelligence assessments. The Russians are coming. Sweden has had this incredible National Guard recruitment campaign. They've increased the size of the Swedish National Guard, literally like our National Guard, 600% in a few months. Yeah.
Hey, at least they can get recruits over.
They're all
in
immigrants.
That's because they get to lead the parade of the gay parade march every 6 months. So apparently that is relatively easy to do. I'm not sure whether their magazines are full or empty at that point.
Well, and was that spurred on by? I know when Trump was in office, he brought up the 2% agreement that a lot of those countries had just decided they didn't have to follow, and it came up again in a rally that Trump gave. It seems kind of coincident.
The last two rallies, and he talked about it outside the courthouse in New York today as well. The Secretary General of NATO this morning at their NATO Ukraine Council meeting, he did like an impromptu. What do they call it? There's a name for it, where they're literally walking into the building, and if they choose to, they can go to all the microphones where the press are, and they do like an impromptu press conference. So he did like a 10-minute press conference, and then the German foreign minister did like a 4-minute one after him, and he said that the average of all of the European countries is 2%. But if you look at them one by one, then because Poland's actually doing 4%, right? So they're actually doing more than America. But he said that it was like 12 out of the then 27 countries. Now there's 32 countries, including Sweden, and there's 18 of the 32 are spending 2% or more. So he acknowledged that it was still work in progress, but they had increased a great amount since.
Well, it wasn't the small countries like
Estonia.
Estonians. It was like Germany wasn't doing it. And
Germany is still the lowest or second lowest. I think Germany and Spain are competing. Like Spain's like 1.1% and Germany's like 1.2 or something.
I mean, let's be honest, 2%. I mean, Spain could be 10%, and their army would probably be fucking worthless. We're talking about Spain, a country that lives on naps and eating out.
Spain hasn't fought since the Spanish Civil War, and you look at countries like Holland, their army is unionized, and they're not allowed to do exercises at the weekend.
I'd like to see that war with Holland. Union rep, this is dangerous.
I actually knew the head of the Dutch Army Union, and he used to tell me some of the stuff that they'd done labor negotiations on. And he's like, yeah, we don't have any exercises on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. We have X 100 days vacation a year. And he was like fat and this huge kind of scraggly beard. And it was absolutely farcical.
And the big scary point they're like is Russia could take over Europe. I think Europe has such shitty militaries that Russia could just do it on accident. Like they just
telling us that Russia is under-equipped, undermanned, incompetent, drunk all the time, worn out equipment. So it's like
that sounds like
you're exactly right. And even Medvedev this week has pointed that out. He's like, are we kind of like, operating the Death Star in space, or do we have to steal washing machines in order to get microchips?
Speaking of under-equipped, I mean, kind of a little sidetrack, but Hobbs did you see this story where the Army's going to quit tracking so much dumb bullshit for gear? Did you see that story?
No, I didn't. Tell me more. And is this going to mean that I can pilfer things more easily?
Yes and no. But, just all that random, they finally realized that all that random bullshit that they make everybody keep track of is just a waste of time and money. So I'll find it and get it to you. I thought maybe you saw that story, but
things like Abrams and Javelins, Patriots.
I mean, that's our government's issue. I mean, they're not even keeping track of that shit at the top. So Why
Yeah.
why would they?
And they definitely don't keep track of it once it gets to Ukraine and then ends up in Mexico, right?
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
some poor freaking privates out inventorying a Connex down to the letter for 30-year-old equipment with moth damage in it.
Yeah. So, funny story, since we're on this tangent about keeping the average Joe accountable for some ridiculous amount of equipment. On my third deployment, my MRAP was hit by a roadside bomb, and it was damaged pretty bad. We managed to limp it back to base, and it was in the shop for a few weeks. And when we finally got it back, we took it out on the road, and it wasn't the first convoy that we took it out on. It was like the second or third. But I was up in the gun hatch, and we were at the test fire barrel on our way out the gate. And as we're sitting there, my driver says, "Hey, the oil pressure just dropped down to 0." And I could hear something go tucka 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 under the hood, and then it stopped. Like, well, it stopped. He's like, "And the oil pressure's back up, so let's just carry on." We got about 5 miles down the road, and the entire truck burst into flames. And we don't know why exactly. I still don't know what happened to this day. But when they finalized the investigation, they were actually considering making me pay for it, saying that because I had failed to do maintenance on it or something, and I was signed for it, that I was liable for $1.5 million worth of MRAP and communications gear and everything else that had burned up. And I said, the fuck I am. They're like, yeah, you're right, but we were just going to see your reaction to it. It's like, yeah, we did everything by the book, man. Like, it's not my fault. It went through all of the checks.
I think the lesson to learn there is if
so
your oil pressure goes to 0, you don't drive 5 miles off base.
Well, no, it went down and then it went back up, and everything seemed fine. And
well, I found the
like,
story,
okay,
Hobbs.
well,
It's
whatever.
The story's titled "Lighten the Load: Army's Plan to Save Time by Shedding Excess Gear." And basically, we've been at war for 3 decades in the Middle East. So during peacetime, you might have a commander might have 10 pages of shit they're keeping track of. Well, they're finding that they've got 50 to 70 pages of obsolete gear that, multiple deployments, and they bring it all back. And they're just going to start.
Except stuff in Afghanistan.
Yeah, except the good shit. So they're just going to start getting rid of it. Because there's no process once that stuff's on your books to get rid of it.
Of stuff that was in BDU and DCU pattern that I just didn't have anymore. Don't know where it went, but I didn't have it anymore. I either turned it in and they didn't take it off of my books or whatever, and they were going to try and make me pay for it. And I said, no, absolutely not. Write this shit off. I don't have it anymore. So, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So,
they issue too much crap.
But anyways, what were we even on before we got on that tangent bitching about the military? I'm sorry, Simon.
Well, we were talking about the Munich Security Conference,
right? Yeah,
and how they're trying to dictate the outcome of the transition to the new world order for the next 60 years in a super friendly kind of way.
Well, when the Europeans are at the head of anything, it's always going to be tyranny with a smile.
It's not
right?
just the Europeans. There will be like 30 or 40 US reps and officials there. And in fact, Dick Durbin, Schumer, and McConnell were all saying the reason we have to get this Ukraine bill through is otherwise we'll be humiliated when we're at the Munich Security Conference unless we can go saying we've done our job.
done our job. I'd like to know what this dickhead thinks our job is that we're not doing.
The job is to steal from the American people and launder it
they're
through
pulling
Ukraine.
that off brilliantly. I mean, at this point. And
that's Yeah, it's been since the 16th
I noticed
Amendment
this
that
time
they've
with the
been mission
funding, they
accomplished
didn't
on
release
one.
that little breakdown of what it was going to. Last time they tried to do the funding, it came out that 40% of it was going to pensions. I noticed that, or maybe they told the Main Street media, "Hey, lay off," talking about that shit. But I didn't see that breakdown come out this time and pushed as much.
True. But I think that the main point that they're trying to do is, well, this was J.D. Vance's opinion. I personally have a slightly different opinion because I don't think there'll be the bill in some regards, like with Taiwan, it says the money is available until like September 2026. With Ukraine, they're saying the money's available until like September 2025. That money is going to be spent in 6 months. So they'll be asking for more money frankly, during the summer recess. Okay. So the idea, according to Vance, that they're going to force Trump to keep on involved in Ukraine because he's going to have money left to spend during 2025 is total BS. All of that will have been expended way, way before the November elections.
Did you see the breakdown that Robert Kennedy Jr. gave of the Ukraine money laundering? It came out at like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was amazing. I found it here. I might play it.
Mhm.
Let me throw it up here because it was great.
A war that should have never happened. It's a war the Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why?
It's 3 minutes.
That country has to conform its military
You haven't started it
purchases
yet. I haven't seen
to
anything yet.
NATO weapons specifications.
It doesn't show up for you,
which
Simon. I'm not
means
sure. I'm
companies,
sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Grumman,
I'll just have to
Raytheon,
imagine.
General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed
right there, he says $113 billion. You could have built a home. In March of 2022, we sent $113 billion. You could have built a home for every homeless person in the country, he says. I mean, that's a great way of breaking it down for somebody watching it. I'm going to hit play again.
Yeah. But his son did
Another
join
24
the Foreign Legion and act as a heavy machine gunner in the battle for Kharkov. So
That's
I have a
unfortunate.
problem with that.
since that 2 months ago, and now President Biden is asking for another $60 billion. But the big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturing.
Yeah. So right there, he says where somebody asked Mitch McConnell if we can really afford to send $113 billion to Ukraine. And Mitch McConnell said, don't worry about it. It's going to American defense manufacturers.
Yeah. No, this is a huge boondoggle for the MIC. That is what, like, they had the chief editor or the editor-in-chief of The Economist come on to the either first or second episode with Jon Stewart back on the Daily Show. Mm-hmm. And she said, what are you complaining about? You're spending like less than 10% of your annual defense budget. You're kind of grinding down the Russians. No Americans getting killed. It's just the Ukrainians. And it's the best return on investment you can make for defense dollars.
Right. All right, I'm going to start it up again.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly cynical way of
It's a
looking
money
at it.
laundering.
Yeah, he admitted it's a money laundering scheme.
And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan.
Now that's a big point there, and he's going to get into that. So he breaks down how BlackRock owns all those MIC companies. And Tim Scott in the debate, he said, don't worry, it's not a gift, it's a loan.
but it's not.
Yeah. Well, they want to act. He says they want to act like it's a loan, so that then they can get conditions on it, and BlackRock can sweep in and scoop it up. I'm going to hit that again here.
Raise your hand if you think that loan's ever getting paid back. Yeah, of course it's not. So why do they call it a loan? Because if they call it a loan, they can impose loan conditions. And what are the loan conditions that we impose on? Number one, an extreme austerity program, so that if you're poor in Ukraine, you're going to be poor forever. Number two, most important, Ukraine has to put all of its government-owned assets up for sale to multinational corporations, including all of its agricultural land, the biggest single asset in Europe. In Ukraine, there's been 1,000 years of war fought over that land. It's the richest farmland in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. 500,000 kids almost, Ukrainian kids, have died to keep that land as part of Ukraine. They almost certainly didn't know about this loan condition. They've already sold 30% of it. The buyers were DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Who do you think owns all of those companies? Yeah, BlackRock. And then,
so I'm going to stop it there because that's the most important point. There is that he says the government is already sending off ownership of those loans in quotation marks so they can put conditions on it to BlackRock. And then when the war's over, BlackRock's going to call in its hand. Let me hide the video here. BlackRock's going to call in its hand and just start taking over Ukrainian land wholesale.
It's already done that.
Yeah,
it's already done that. The investment funds have bought up like 60% of the land of Ukraine.
Yeah, I know. And you've been saying this stuff. I just thought it was shocking to see Robert F. Kennedy saying it on a major platform and it getting some play.
Right.
Whether people are just going to say, "Oh, I mean, they've already tried pinning RFK Jr. as a nut job," but whether they're going to just try and pin that as some nutty conspiracy theory that BlackRock is buying up Ukraine through the war, he made the comment, probably over 500,000 young Ukrainians have died in this war. Do they realize it's for a loan to BlackRock? I mean,
no,
how
they
shitty
do.
Is that?
No, that has sunk in now, and that's why we're seeing the surrender rate really increase significantly. They're surrendering. Company size groups are surrendering now.
And in Russia, essentially, if they take over that part of the land, is a lot better than having everything you own bought out from underneath of you by a multinational.
Yeah, BlackRock's buying out America.
You're fighting to defend BlackRock's interests.
Yeah. Now you think that you're fighting to defend your land, your home, only to have your government sell your land and your home out from under you to an asset management fund. I would be like, hey, Russia, I will take that deal.
The whole thing about how BlackRock's buying up all the houses in America too. I mean, welcome to the show, Ukraine. You get to be a subsidiary of BlackRock, just like America is at this point.
They're more interested in the world's last great agricultural land as opposed to houses per se in Ukraine. I mean, but did you two guys notice that I sent you a speech? It's in your DMs, both of you, from Syed Al-Houthi today. And
I did not get on X today. No.
Okay. Well, if you go there now and have a look, you'll find it. And you are, no offense, but a little slack on that. You kind of check it once a week.
It's an hour-long interview, right?
It's an hour and 10. But if you would humor me, it will literally blow your socks off. Okay. If you would scroll forward to 55 minutes and 0 seconds, if you can do that relatively easily. I'm serious. It's not like super complicated like policy analysis. It's him explaining what the hell is going on in the Red Sea and that's 6 minutes out of 71 minutes. But if you literally play from 55 minutes until 1 hour and 1 minute, so just 6 minutes in total, it is an absolute revelation.
Yeah, let me get there. It's trying to be laggy for some reason.
Yeah.
Here, I got it.
Hobbs, you'll be stunned at this.
And once again, you won't be able to hear it, Simon. So.
It's no problem. I've heard it several times. I've really analyzed this in detail.
All right, so let's see here. I'm going to put it solo on here and play it. I'm starting.
So your listening audience can play it?
Yeah, they'll hear it.
Cool.
Yep.
Maybe. It's like when I try and get it to play. Well, I don't know if X is having issues with it or not, but it won't play, Simon, because my internet connection is fine. Could you break it down for us? And if it starts, I'll...
Yeah, sure. So I can explain it. So he's Syed al-Houthi, and he's the head of the Houthi faction, basically. He does weekly talks, sometimes twice a week, and they have Friday demonstrations, which they've done for many weeks now. And even though the country's not that big, they are regularly having 1 million people attend these pro-Palestine demonstrations. Okay. Now, what he's saying is that the only reason we're attacking shipping is because we're siding with Palestine and we're essentially blockading Israel. And as soon as Israel stops attacking Gaza, we'll stop attacking ships. And any suggestion that us attacking ships is because we woke up in the morning and felt like attacking ships is like absolutely absurd, which is what the State Department is saying like every other day. Okay, they're saying, oh yeah, the Houthis, they're just like a gang of pirates and they like blowing up ships, and therefore we have to drop bombs on them, which is now occurred 15 separate times. We are at war with the Houthis. We've attacked them 15 times. Okay, we've killed a whole load of people, blown up a whole load of stuff. We're in full war with the Houthis, and he's saying the only reason that we're attacking the British and the Americans is because they've started bombing the hell out of us. But we have not only gathered about 2 million to support the criminality of the Israeli enemy against the Palestinian people in an issue which is clear to the whole world. But we've formed them into militia units, and we're now putting them all through military training. Clear to all, so if clear the to all people. Marines try and land expeditionary force, they're going to be outnumbered like 50-1. His clear firm stance that in supporting the oppression, quite impressive, frankly, or in supporting as far as I'm concerned. And he's saying that America is trying, as it always does, to drag other countries with it in its foreign policy fiascos, and that other countries should make sure they don't follow Britain's example, and some of these other countries that have sent 3 staff officers and a dog and a kind of ceremonial goat or something, right? And stay away from this intervention so that you don't make enemies of the Yemenis, which is kind of a good rhyme. And he's saying that they want to see food and medicine be delivered to the Gazans.
Well, and what happened with the Rafah operation? Wasn't that on a 24-hour?
People should be aware that no. So what happened there is they had that attack that killed, I don't know, like 100 people and wounded 200 or 300. That was purely a diversion for their Navy SEALs and police hostage rescue team to go in and rescue those 2 elderly Argentinians like 2 days after Milei had left the country, having told the prophecy about the rebuilding of the third temple. And I'm not joking there. He really did that. He did a press conference telling the story of the fox, the two stories of the foxes. And so that wasn't the actual ground assault. There was like 50 airstrikes, army artillery, naval gunfire, but there was no actual incursion per se.
Okay.
But they are telegraphing that they're going to do a ground invasion, and that's been discussed by Gavir, Smotrich, Gantz, Gallant, and Bibi, and it's freaked out the South Africans and the Europeans so much that the South Africans have put a emergency application for an additional injunction into the International Court of Justice that South Africa actually responded to today.
Well, I know you guys have been following that really close on the weaponized news. So any developments in there, hit over Sam and Simon over on weaponized news. What do you got coming up tomorrow that people might pop over and catch?
The start of the MSC, where we're literally doing wall-to-wall coverage of that. Yeah, I mean, not every aspect of the show, but a lot of the show tomorrow will deal with that. We've basically gone 6 days a week, so there's now a late night Saturday show, and I'm now going to start doing a Sunday show with a guy called Snarky, who's a big caller on InfoWars. So I'm literally going to 7 days a week starting this weekend.
So weaponized news over there. If you guys aren't following to do it already, we're getting over an hour. So
no, you can wrap it up whenever you like.
Probably
I'm just answering your questions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the one thing we didn't talk about on domestic stuff was the Kansas City Chiefs shooting. And is usually the case, if you don't hear the race mentioned right away, you can usually guess who did it, and sure enough.
Well, there was also the shooting down at Joel Osteen's church in Houston, Texas, as well, where you had
complete failure of the system on that one. If you saw the details of that one, I mean, what the fuck?
So you had a Hispanic transgender with her 5-year-old child. I'm not sure if the child's died yet, but the cops obviously decided that center of mass was her knee height, and it appears to be a Latino illegal immigrant who's involved in the Kansas City Chiefs shooting.
I saw an early report. It was a group of three Utes, and one of them managed to shoot his jaw off, pulling his weapon out of his backpack or something or another. I don't know what happened. I mean, the details will be interesting. Who knows how many we'll get because they were juveniles. But, once again, it stood true that if they don't mention it right away, you can about guess on who did it. But yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. And as always, check out Sam and Simon over on Weaponized News. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, Rhodes, Liberty.com. No extra show this week. I'm traveling. I don't know if we'll have another observations down the road coming up. We don't have anything on the horizon, but we always mention those when we have them. So from Hobbs and myself, thanks for joining us. And Sam, stay honky.